Am I a jerk for ending things with my girlfriend after she turned down my proposal not once, but twice? Alright, let me walk you through how everything actually happened from the beginning. So I'd been with this girl, Vanessa, for around 5 years. And honestly, man, she's incredible. She's funny, she's smart, super easygoing, and from the start we just fit together naturally. You know that feeling when you meet someone and everything just seems to click without you even trying? That's exactly how it felt with her. We first ran into each other at this random party some friends basically forced us to go to. Truth be told, neither of us even wanted to show up that night. But somehow we ended up talking, and once we started we didn't stop. We spent the whole night laughing and chatting about dumb stuff like terrible movies and those weird stories everyone has from childhood. Anyway, fast forward a couple years, and by that point I was already pretty sure I wanted to marry her. After about 2 years together, I had this strong feeling she was the one, or whatever people like to call it. So I started putting money aside for a ring, figuring I'd propose once my financial situation was a little more stable. In my mind, the plan was simple: get myself into a better place first, then pop the question. It just felt like the responsible thing to do. Plus, I didn't want to do some rushed, half-baked proposal. Vanessa deserved something thoughtful, and I didn't want us worrying about money right after getting engaged. So last year, after busting my butt at work and finally feeling like my life was somewhat together, well, at least not completely falling apart, I decided the time had come. I was completely ready to take the next step in our relationship. Honestly, I was excited as hell about it. And it wasn't just my idea either. Vanessa and I had talked about marriage plenty of times before. From everything she said, she seemed totally into the idea. She'd say things like she couldn't imagine being with anyone else, and how she wanted us to build a future together. Because of that, I didn't feel like I was walking into this blindly. It honestly seemed like we were both thinking the same thing. So I planned the proposal at the beach where we had our very first date. Since both of us are pretty low-key people, I figured it would be better if it was just the two of us. No big public spectacle, no fancy restaurant full of strangers staring at us. Just something personal. I still remember that first date like it happened yesterday. Back then we were both broke, so we packed a cheap little picnic, grabbed a couple drinks, and sat on the sand talking until the cold finally forced us to leave. And honestly, it was perfect. Anyway, on the day I planned to propose, I was nervous as hell. I mean, I was almost certain she'd say yes. But still, asking someone to marry you is a huge moment. I bought the ring, mapped out the whole day, and made sure we got to the beach right around sunset because Vanessa always talked about how much she loved sunsets. And the weather that day? Absolutely perfect. One of those evenings where the sky turns these crazy shades of pink and purple. It honestly felt like the universe was telling me this was the right time. So we get to the beach, and on the outside I'm trying to act normal. But inside, my brain is basically panicking. We're walking along the water, talking about random stuff, and then suddenly I stop. I take her hand and start telling her how much she means to me. I told her how deeply I loved her and how I couldn't picture my life without her in it. Then I dropped down on one knee, pulled the ring out of my pocket, and asked her to marry me. And that's where things got weird. She looked at me, like really looked at me, and just stood there silently for what felt like forever. Finally she said, "I want to marry you, but not right now." I just stood there thinking what? For a second my brain couldn't even process what she'd said. I was still kneeling there with the ring in my hand, probably looking like a complete idiot while I tried to understand what was happening. I want to marry you, but not right now. What the hell does that even mean? Man, my heart just dropped right there. She said she wasn't ready for the whole engagement thing yet. According to her, she didn't really feel comfortable being engaged at that moment and needed more time. She didn't go into much detail beyond that. She just kept saying it wasn't the right time for her. And honestly, that felt like getting punched straight in the gut. But I didn't want to cause a scene, so I forced a smile and said something like, "Yeah, okay, I understand." But the truth is, I didn't understand it at all. We had talked about marriage before. She'd told me she wanted a future with me. And there I was, opening my heart and asking the biggest question of my life, only to get what felt like a half rejection. Still, I tried to convince myself maybe she simply needed more time. After all, I had waited a full year to get my life together before proposing, so maybe she just wasn't there yet. So I told myself it wasn't a huge deal and tried to brush it off. We spent the rest of the evening pretending everything was normal. But honestly, it wasn't. The whole atmosphere had changed, and I couldn't stop overthinking everything. I kept asking myself questions. Did I rush it? Should I have waited longer? Was the timing wrong? Did I not know her as well as I thought? But I never actually asked her any of those things. I didn't want to come off like I was pressuring her. At the time, I really believed the best thing I could do was give her space and time. Looking back though, I wish I had asked more questions. I should have just asked her straight up what she meant by "not right now." Was it about me? Was there something else going on? Did she even seriously see marriage in our future? But instead of pushing for answers, I let it slide and told myself it wasn't a big deal. So for the next year, I acted like everything was fine. But in reality, that moment never left my mind. Every time the topic of marriage came up, I'd feel that same sting again. Still, I kept telling myself maybe she just needed more time. Our relationship was still good. We were traveling together, hanging out with friends, doing all the normal couple stuff. So I figured everything would eventually work itself out. I kept thinking, okay, she's just not ready yet. She'll come around. At least that's what I hoped. So yeah, that's how the first proposal went. Definitely not the way I imagined it. But I let it go because I loved her. I didn't want to pressure her into something she wasn't ready for. What I didn't realize at the time was that her whole, not right now, answer would end up becoming a much bigger problem later. After that first proposal, an entire year passed. And yeah, sometimes things felt a little strange between us. It was almost like the whole, I want to marry you, but not right now moment had just been erased from existence. I thought maybe we'd talk about it a few weeks later or something. But that conversation never happened. And honestly, I didn't bring it up either because I didn't want to seem pushy. We were still acting like a normal couple, so I kept telling myself everything was fine. But as more time went by, I started thinking something else. What if this was never going to happen? Why wasn't she ready? And why couldn't she give me a better explanation than just not yet? I mean, we were both pushing 30 and had already been together for 5 years. At some point, you either know or you don't, right? Anyway, despite all that, I eventually started planning another proposal. Deep down, I still believed she wanted a future with me, just like she used to say. I figured maybe she simply needed more time. Or maybe I just needed to make the proposal a little more special this time. The first one had been quiet and personal, just the two of us on the beach. But this time I thought maybe she'd appreciate something a little more memorable. So I started brainstorming ways to make it bigger and more meaningful. Eventually, I decided to bring some of our friends into the plan. I didn't want the proposal to turn into some huge public scene with a crowd staring at us. That's just not really my style. And I knew she wasn't a fan of huge public proposals, so I kept it small with just a few close friends. But I did want our closest friends to help me put it together. In my mind, having the people we care about involved would make the moment feel more special and memorable. And I figured if we were surrounded by friends who supported us, maybe it would make her feel more comfortable saying yes. So I started putting the whole thing together. I ended up booking this beautiful botanical garden that had this amazing fountain area. The place was full of big roses, greenery everywhere. The kind of spot that practically screams romance. I knew she'd love it because Vanessa is absolutely obsessed with plants and nature. Seriously, she's got like 20 plants in the apartment we shared right now, and somehow I managed to accidentally kill half of them. So I kept thinking, yeah, this is the perfect place to do it. I even asked a few of our friends to help me set everything up ahead of time. The plan was simple. Vanessa and I would go out for dinner first, just the two of us, at a nice restaurant nearby. After that we'd take a walk over to the garden, where our friends would already have everything arranged. Roses, candles, decorations, basically the whole romantic setup. In my head, it was going to be flawless. I was completely convinced this time things would go the way I hoped. Then the night of the proposal finally arrived. I tried to act relaxed on the outside, but inside my nerves were going crazy again. I kept remembering what happened the year before when she turned me down, and I was honestly praying that this time wouldn't end the same way. I really didn't want to go through that again. Still, I stayed hopeful, maybe a little too hopeful. Dinner went great. We were both in a good mood, laughing, having some wine, and it honestly felt like the old days, like there was nothing weird between us at all. After we finished eating, I suggested we take a walk through the botanical garden. She was totally on board with the idea, of course having no clue what I had planned. When we reached the fountain area, everything was exactly the way I imagined. Roses everywhere. Candles lighting up the path. It looked incredible. Our friends had seriously nailed it. I took her hand, and we slowly walked toward the fountain together. At that point my heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my chest, but I did my best to stay calm. When we reached the spot, I started giving this speech about how much she means to me. I told her how deeply I love her, how I can't picture my life with anyone else, and how ready I am to take the next step with her. She started tearing up, and in that moment I thought, this is it. This is finally happening. So I dropped down onto one knee again, pulled out the ring, and asked her to marry me. And then she said the exact same thing. Not just yet. For a second I honestly thought I must have misheard her. I just stood there staring, trying to process what she'd said. Not just yet. Again, it felt like someone punched me straight in the stomach. The difference this time was that I couldn't just brush it off like I did the first time. Back then I tried to pretend it wasn't a big deal. But this time it hurt way more. I stood up and tried to stay calm, but I had to ask, why? What exactly is stopping you? I was trying to keep my voice steady, but inside I was seriously frustrated. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and basically repeated the same explanation she gave me the year before. She said she wanted to make sure everything would work out and that she still wasn't ready yet. And that's when my patience started running out. I asked her directly if there was someone else. Maybe another guy. Maybe someone in her life was influencing her. Her parents, a friend, I didn't know. None of it made sense to me. We'd been together for 5 years. How could she still not know whether she wanted to marry me? She shook her head and said no. There wasn't anyone else. She just needed more time. And right then, everything kind of hit me all at once. I had already waited an entire year after the first proposal. I had put a ton of effort into making this one special. I thought our relationship was stronger now. Yet there I was, standing in the middle of this gorgeous garden, hearing the same words again. Not yet. I felt like a complete idiot. How many times was I supposed to ask this question? And how long exactly was I supposed to keep waiting? I told her that straight up. I said if after 5 years she still wasn't sure, then I honestly didn't know what else I could do. I couldn't keep sitting around waiting for her to figure it out. It felt like my entire life was on pause for someone who wasn't even certain she wanted the same future. She didn't say much after that. All she did was ask me, once again, for more time. And that's when something in me finally snapped. I didn't yell or lose my temper, but inside I was done. I told her, I can't keep doing this. I love you, but I'm not going to keep putting myself out there if you're just going to keep saying no. I could see the moment it hit her that I meant it. Her expression changed immediately. She started crying and begging me not to leave. Then she suddenly said, "Fine, I'll marry you. Please don't go." And honestly, that part made me even more upset, because it sounded like she was only saying yes now that she realized I might walk away. It didn't feel genuine at all. It didn't feel like she actually wanted to marry me. It felt like she was just scared of losing me. I didn't even answer her. I just turned around and walked away. At that point, I didn't know what else to say. My head was spinning, my heart felt crushed, and all I wanted was to get as far away from that place as possible. After that second proposal, I knew something had to change. There was no way I could go back to pretending everything was fine like I did after the first one. But for the next couple of days, I honestly had no idea what to do. My thoughts were all over the place. 5 years is a long time to be with someone, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to just throw that all away. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the feeling that she might never actually be ready. And if she wasn't ready by now, then when would she be? The day after the proposal, we barely spoke. Vanessa stayed in the guest room, which was kind of our unspoken rule whenever we fought. We'd give each other some space. Usually by the next day we'd talk it out, and things would go back to normal. But this time was different. I didn't feel like talking. Honestly, I didn't even know what I would say if we did. I needed time to process everything that had just happened. A few days passed, and eventually I noticed something. I wasn't really angry at her anymore. What I felt instead was disappointment. You know that feeling when you give something everything you've got, and it still doesn't work out? That's exactly where I was. In my mind, I thought I had done everything right. Or at least I tried to. And somehow it still wasn't enough. It sucked. Plain and simple. By the end of that week, we finally sat down to talk. She was actually the one who started the conversation. She asked me to sit with her on the couch and said we needed to figure things out. And she was right. We couldn't just keep avoiding the problem. So I told her exactly how I felt. I said I couldn't keep waiting around while she decided whether she wanted to marry me. If after 5 years she still didn't know, I honestly wasn't sure she ever would. She sat there quietly for a long time. Then she finally spoke. "I do love you," she said, "and I do want to be with you. But I just don't think I'm ready for marriage yet." And there it was again. That same phrase I had heard before. Not ready. I could feel the frustration building inside me again, but I kept myself under control. So I asked her one simple question. "Why not? What exactly is holding you back?" I asked her. "We've been together for 5 years, and we've talked about marriage plenty of times. You told me this was something you wanted." She let out this long sigh, and I could see she was struggling to explain what she meant. "I don't know," she finally said. "Marriage is a big commitment, and I don't want to rush into something if I'm not completely sure." And right then it hit me. She wasn't unsure about marriage. She was unsure about me. Not about us as a couple. Not about the relationship in general. Just me. And honestly, hearing that hurt more than I expected. I could understand someone needing time before getting married. That's fair. But not being sure about the person you're with after 5 years? That's a completely different situation. I leaned back on the couch, trying to wrap my head around what she'd just said. Then I asked her directly, "Do you think you'll ever be sure?" She looked up at me, and for the first time since we started talking, she didn't have an answer. She just stared down at her hands, sitting there in silence. That's when I realized this probably wasn't going to change. I stood up and said, "I can't keep doing this. I love you," I told her. "But if you're still unsure about me after all this time, then I honestly don't think that's ever going to change. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life waiting around, hoping you eventually make up your mind. She started crying. And yeah, it wasn't easy to see that. Hurting her was the last thing I ever wanted. But at the same time, I couldn't keep pretending everything between us was fine. She begged me not to leave. Over and over she kept saying, "I'll marry you, I promise. Just give me a little more time." But that was exactly the problem. I didn't want her to marry me because she was afraid of losing me. I wanted her to actually want it. I wanted her to be excited about building a future together. But she wasn't. She was just scared of being alone. And that wasn't the kind of marriage I was looking for. I wasn't willing to settle for something like that. So I told her I needed to go. That same night, I packed a small bag and stayed at a friend's place for a few days. I figured we both needed some time apart to calm down and think. But deep down, I already knew the truth. It was over. There was no fixing this. The next few days were really rough. I kept replaying everything in my head over and over, trying to figure out where things went wrong. Was it something I did? Was it something about her? Or maybe it was both of us. Honestly, I didn't know. All I knew was that the relationship didn't feel right anymore. Somewhere along the way it had turned into something it wasn't supposed to be. And no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fix it. During that week she called me a few times. At first I didn't answer. I just wasn't ready to talk. Eventually though, I picked up. We had one of those awkward conversations where neither person really knows what to say. She kept asking if I'd come home. And I kept telling her I needed more time to think. Yeah, I know. The irony wasn't lost on me. After being so frustrated about her asking for time, now I was the one doing the same thing. But it wasn't really the same situation. I wasn't trying to decide whether I loved her. I was trying to figure out how to move forward without her. Then the messages started. And man, there were a lot of messages. Her friends, her parents, even some people we both knew started blowing up my phone. Apparently Vanessa had told everyone that I dumped her because she wasn't ready to get married. And of course, almost all of them immediately took her side. They called me immature, selfish, a jerk for throwing away a 5-year relationship just because she wasn't ready for the next step. But what none of them seemed to understand was that it wasn't about the wedding. It wasn't even about getting married right away. The real issue was that she wasn't sure about me. If someone still doesn't know whether they want you after 5 years together, how long are you supposed to wait? 5 years? 10? It felt like everyone completely missed the point. The interesting thing was that not all of my friends took her side. A few of them actually said they understood where I was coming from. They didn't necessarily pick sides, but they weren't blaming me either. They knew how much effort I had put into the relationship. They knew how serious I was about building a future with her. And hearing that helped a little. It made me feel like I wasn't completely crazy for walking away. I think that's when it finally sank in for me. It was really over. I wasn't going back. No amount of begging or promises could change the fact that she didn't truly see a future with me. Not in the way I needed her to. About a week later, I went back to the apartment to grab the rest of my things. Vanessa wasn't there, and honestly I was relieved. I didn't want to deal with another emotional conversation. I packed up the rest of my stuff, set my key on the kitchen counter, and walked out the door. For the last time. And just like that, it was over. 5 years together. Gone. And yeah, it hurt like hell. But at the same time, for the first time in a long while, I felt like I had made the right decision. I wasn't going to settle for someone who wasn't sure about me. I deserved more than that. Update 1. After I packed my things and left the apartment for good, I thought life would start feeling easier. I figured I'd feel this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. But that's not what happened. Instead, everything just felt heavy. The breakup didn't really hit me until I got back to my friend Brandon's place and sat down on his couch with my duffel bag at my feet. Brandon's a solid guy. He's the type of friend who doesn't ask a bunch of questions or try to analyze everything. He just handed me a soda, told me to make myself at home, and let me crash there. Most nights we just played video games or watched dumb movies. For a little while, that actually helped take my mind off things. But then the messages started again, and I couldn't ignore reality anymore. Vanessa texted me almost every single day. At first the messages were pretty predictable. Stuff like, "Can we talk?" or "I miss you," which, honestly, I expected. But after a while her tone started changing. Since I wasn't answering her calls, she began sending these really long texts about how I was being unreasonable for not trying to work things out. She kept saying things like, "You're throwing everything away over one small issue," and "You're going to regret this." That honestly made me angry. Throwing everything away? Really? I didn't even know how to respond without turning it into another argument. So I chose not to respond at all. But ignoring her messages wasn't easy. Every time my phone buzzed, I'd feel this knot form in my stomach. Part of me still cared about her. But deep down I knew this wasn't something we could fix. I had to keep reminding myself that this wasn't just about marriage. It was about her not being sure about me. About us. The truth is, when you spend 5 years with someone, they become a huge part of your life. You get used to having them around every day. Even though things had gotten rocky toward the end, Vanessa had been such a big part of my life for so long that suddenly being without her felt strange. Sometimes I catch myself scrolling through old photos of us on my phone, looking at all the memories we had made together. I know it sounds stupid, but it was like I was trying to figure out where everything started going wrong. Was there something I missed? Some sign that things were falling apart before the proposals even happened? I spent way too much time thinking about stuff like that. Brandon kept telling me I was overthinking it. And yeah, maybe he was right. But it's hard not to overanalyze things when you've invested 5 years of your life into someone. You want to believe it all meant something, that it wasn't just 5 years that disappeared for nothing. After about a week of not hearing anything from Vanessa, the messages started coming from her friends instead. And man, they did not hold back. A few of them flat out called me a jerk for leaving her. One girl even told me, "You're just afraid of commitment," which is pretty ironic, considering I literally proposed twice. Another one of her friends sent me this long message explaining how selfish I was for not giving Vanessa more time to figure out what she wanted. Apparently 5 years together wasn't enough time. Then there was one message that really stuck with me. Her friend Nicole wrote, "You were just the safe option for her anyway. She'll find someone better." Yeah, that one hit hard. I didn't respond to it either, but it stayed in my head. Was I really just some kind of backup plan for her? Vanessa herself had never said anything like that to me. But once the idea got into my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if she really had been waiting for someone else? Someone better, whatever that even means. While all that was happening, my own friends had plenty to say too. Brandon kept things simple, like he usually does. He just shrugged and said, "Dude, you're better off. If she can't decide after 5 years, she's never going to." My buddy Trevor, on the other hand, was way more blunt about it. He actually thought I should have ended things after the first time she rejected the proposal. He kept saying, "Man, why did you even give her a second chance? She already told you everything you needed to know the first time." And honestly, I didn't have a good answer for that. I guess I just didn't want to give up on her that quickly. Maybe that makes me sound naive. But back then, I still believed things between us could work out. Emotionally, I was all over the place. Part of me was angry. Part of me was frustrated. And another part of me was just plain sad. But there was also this weird sense of guilt that wouldn't go away. Every time one of her friends sent another message, I'd catch myself thinking, am I actually the bad guy here? I kept questioning my own decision, even though deep down I knew I had made the right call. Breaking up with her wasn't some impulsive reaction. I had thought about it long and hard. Still, when you've got people coming at you from every direction telling you you're the jerk, it can really mess with your head. About 2 weeks after the breakup, Vanessa finally sent me another message. But this one was different. It wasn't angry. It wasn't begging. It was just simple. "I understand now. I'm sorry. I hope you find someone who makes you happy." And that was the last message I ever got from her. No more calls. No more texts. Nothing. It felt strangely final. And honestly, I didn't quite know how to feel about it. Part of me felt relieved that the constant back and forth was finally over. But another part of me felt like the last connection between us had just been cut. I wish I could say that's when everything suddenly got easier. But the truth is, it didn't. I still had moments where I'd think about her, about what we had together, about what our future could have looked like. But as time went on, those moments started happening less and less. The more distance I had from her, the clearer things became. Eventually, I realized that ending the relationship really was the right decision. It hurt like hell, but it was necessary. I didn't want to spend my life stuck in a relationship where I was always waiting for someone to finally be ready. After a while, I moved out of Brandon's place and got my own apartment. Nothing fancy, just a small one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. But it was mine. I started focusing more on myself, seeing friends, going to the gym, trying to get my life back into some kind of rhythm again. Slowly but surely, things began to feel normal. I won't say I'm completely over everything, but I'm definitely in a better place now. Looking back on it all, I realized something important. I deserve to be with someone who's certain about me, not someone who needs years to decide if I'm worth it. It's a hard truth to accept, but I've made peace with it. So yeah, that's basically what happened afterward. It wasn't pretty, and there's still some fallout from it. But I think I'm finally moving forward. Update 2. After a few months of getting used to living on my own again, I started to feel like I was finally adjusting. It wasn't like life suddenly became perfect or anything, but things just felt easier. I wasn't waking up every morning with that tight knot in my stomach anymore. Vanessa wasn't constantly on my mind, and I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes hoping, or dreading, that she might text me. I had my own routine again, my own space, and honestly, having my own apartment felt pretty good. If I wanted to leave dishes in the sink, I could. If I felt like blasting music at 1 in the morning, nobody was there to complain. Or sometimes I'd just sit quietly on the balcony with a soda and enjoy the silence. No one to answer to. It was peaceful. Work was going pretty well too. I'm not the type of person who buries themselves in their job after a breakup, but having something productive to focus on definitely helped. When I was buried in projects or stuck in meetings all day, my mind stayed busy. For a while, that was the biggest victory for me. Just being able to concentrate on something without drifting back into old memories. But like people always say, the moment you start thinking you've moved on, life finds a way to test you. One Thursday night, I was out at a bar with Brandon. We hadn't hung out properly in a while because we'd both been busy with work. So we decided to grab a few drinks, play some pool, and catch up. The night was going great. We were laughing, drinking beers, trash-talking each other over the pool table. Nothing serious. Just one of those nights where you're living in the moment. Then suddenly, while we were in the middle of a game, Brandon got this weird look on his face. I was lining up a shot when he leaned over and said, dude, Vanessa's here." I froze. For a second my mind just went blank. I stood there holding the pool cue, not knowing what to do. I hadn't seen her in months. Yeah, I had heard through friends that she was seeing someone new. But hearing about it and actually seeing it are two very different things. Still, I tried to keep my composure. I didn't want to make a scene. It's a small town. Running into each other eventually was pretty much inevitable. So I took a deep breath and casually glanced over. And there she was, sitting at the bar with some guy. They were laughing together, sharing drinks, looking like they were having a great time. And honestly, it didn't hit me the way I thought it would. Yeah, my heart sank a little at first, but it wasn't the crushing feeling I had imagined. I watched them for a moment, then looked back at Brandon. He was staring at me like he expected me to completely lose it. I just shook my head and said, "It's fine, man. Let's keep playing." And that was it. No dramatic confrontation. No meltdown. We just went back to the game. I pretended like I hadn't just seen my ex with another guy. It wasn't exactly easy though. Every time I glanced up, they were still there. Laughing, talking, enjoying themselves. It wasn't really jealousy. It was more like this strange mix of nostalgia and relief. Part of me missed her, but another part of me felt relieved that it wasn't me sitting at that bar with her anymore. Brandon noticed I got quieter after that. He asked if I was all right. I told him I was fine. But deep down I felt this weird emptiness. Not because I wanted her back, but because it finally sank in that this chapter of my life was truly over. Seeing her with someone else felt like the final confirmation. It wasn't just me moving on. She had moved on too. And even though I knew it was the right thing, it still stung a little. Eventually we finished our game and decided to call it a night. Brandon asked if I wanted to hit another bar or grab another drink somewhere. But I told him I was tired and just wanted to head home. I think he understood I wasn't really in the mood for more socializing. When I got back to my apartment, I stepped out onto the balcony with a soda and just stared out at the trees for a while. I kept thinking about how much had changed in just a few months. A year earlier, I had been planning my future with Vanessa. Now she was just someone from my past. A person I used to know. It was a lot to process. But strangely enough, I also felt a sense of closure. Seeing her happy with someone else made me realize it was finally time to let go. So that's exactly what I did. I sat out there for a long time, thinking about everything that had happened. And for the first time in a while, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I wasn't confused. I was just okay. Life moves forward. People move forward. Vanessa had moved on. And so had I. It wasn't some big emotional breakthrough. Just a quiet moment where I accepted things for what they were. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter. It might sound cheesy, but it felt like a weight had finally lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't holding on to anger anymore. No regrets. Vanessa was part of my past now. And it was time for me to focus on the future. Over the next few weeks, I slowly started putting myself out there again. Not in the sense of jumping straight back into dating. I definitely wasn't ready for that yet. But I stopped hiding from life. I went out more. Talked to new people. Started thinking about what I actually wanted. Not just in a relationship, but in life overall. Breakups have a weird way of making you rethink everything. It wasn't only about getting over Vanessa. It was about figuring out who I was and what direction I wanted my life to go. And I realized I still had a lot to learn about myself. But that was okay. I wasn't in a hurry anymore. For the first time in a long time, I felt content with where I was. So yeah, that's where things stand right now. I'm moving forward. Slowly, but surely. Life isn't perfect. But honestly, it never really is. And these days, I'm okay with that. I'm just taking things one step at a time, trying not to stress about the future too much, and enjoying the present for what it is. As for what comes next, well, I guess I'll just have to wait and see.